IVM.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Uncle Please Sit. I'm Joel Pereira and with me is my co-host Tushar Abhichandani. Tushar, how's it going?
It's going well, Joel. How's it going with you?
I'm still trapped at home. Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. We are on episode...
We haven't up the intro so far.
We haven't up the intro so far. And
24 episodes for this.
Yeah, this is the first episode that we have. It's called the learning curve, Tushar. Yeah.
Good job.
And we also have a guest, as we've had guests for a while now. And with us today is Rohan Joshi, who is a stand-up comedian, a writer, a gentleman, and a warrior poet. Rohan, what's up?
I am also a flamboyant flaneur of the Santa Cruz Wilds. And you forgot that. What is going on, gentlemen? How are you?
Yeah, good, man.
It's COVID times.
Yes, great time. Everybody at home enjoying like anything.
Enjoying like anything. I am basically waiting for another week because I want to wait. This show has dropped last week, The Boys, and I'm waiting for 4 episodes so I can watch them all in a row.
I saw the first 3. I caved. It's done. I randomly have to deal with people who for no reason will just message me spoilers.
That is also
like it just why? Because you. That's why. And so
meaning what? Like Bobby Deol was the killer? Ha ha ha.
Like literally just sometimes with no context also. So I don't realize what the I said until I watch the thing and I go. I know because this guy just left this contextless sentence.
Just horrible people.
And it's always a guy. So just nonsense.
कभी नहीं सुधरने वाला.
नहीं, कभी नहीं सुधरने वाला. So I have to get on. Dude, I basically have moratoriums. So I've trained myself now in the art of when something new comes out. There's a lizard. I've trained the lizard part of my brain now. I will not open my DM folder until I am done consuming. And that can be sometimes days and days and days where I will just not see my DM requests because I'm like, not until I'm done. I can't even accidentally, this is like the eclipse, can't accidentally look at it also.
I didn't even know that was a thing. People are such dicks.
No, people do it all the time. Dude, it's a very common WhatsApp thing.
How could you not know that was a thing? People
WhatsApp
are assholes.
groups, dude, I've seen this.
Because I am a mendicant on social media. No one talks to me.
But you still know what the bare face of humanity looks like.
Yeah.
And that, sir, is assholery.
This was a thing on WhatsApp groups a while ago. People on random WhatsApp group would send you this kind of stuff. Here's the story of this film.
That's just why. So, yeah, there's 2 things I avoid. I avoid my DMs and I avoid Reddit like the plague. Whenever a new pop culture thing comes out.
Tushar, what are we talking about this week?
This is actually a great segue because the behavior that Rohan just described is toxic. And what we're going to be talking about today is Indian pop culture toxic. We'll be doing that right after the break.
Sachin Tendulkar, Virat Kohli, Don Bradman, and now Cyrus Brocha. Okay, probably not in the right company. I mean, Don Bradman is Australian. But it's called Cyrus Says, a wonderful show about everything. Find the show on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
And we're back. With us today is Rohan Joshi, who is our guest, and we are talking about the toxicity of popular culture. Not all popular culture, Indian popular culture, because I guess we
live in India.
And that is what's relevant to us.
As good a reason as any.
So first, quick question. What do you guys, when I say pop culture, what do you think of?
At this point, pretty much everything. Literally pretty much everything. Because, we live in an age where with the internet and memes and everything is up for discussion. Everything, right? From sport to politics to whatever. So I feel like everything is pop culture now, but I guess broadly it consists of a universe of fictional and non-fictional infotainment across media.
Yeah. TV, books, internet, YouTube, even...
So many things.
The screen in your Ola.
Yeah, so many things.
Sports, politics.
That's what I'm saying, right? Everything. Sport, politics, business. Stonks is a meme. Come on.
Yeah. What is stonks? What does it come from?
Explain it to you.
No, I know what it is. I know what it is. It's that bizarre, silvery, mannequin head looking at things.
The idea is just everything in our world, but one letter wrong, right? Like just to portray like a certain kind of, I guess, simple-minded. I don't know. I don't know how to explain this meme to you, man. It's like the Matrix. Like you either see it or you don't. I can't believe I have to say this to you on your own show, but uncle, please sit.
Sit, yeah. Pretty much.
We have established many times over the duration or over the course of the show that we indeed are uncles.
We are the seated uncles.
Indeed.
We are the seated uncles, because now we are also sitting around and casting judgment on everyone.
Yeah.
So that's exactly.
I'm just looking at the time. We're only about like 8 hours too early for Laughter Club right now.
Yeah,
like the three of us. That's it. It's just 8 hours too early to do Laughter Club. That's it. That's all this is.
Yeah.
So,
what does pop culture mean to you? Like,
for those of you who are looking for an accurate definition of pop culture, there's highbrow culture, which is the elite culture, which is like art and like classical music and serious cinema, etc. And then there's popular culture, which is supposed to be the culture of the masses, which I think it's all the culture now, right? I mean, there was a time when there was a difference. There was a difference between
there was a point where it was TV and cinema and
because we at one point lived in a time where it was not possible. Nobody had the tools to create pop culture themselves. It was just not possible physically, technologically.
To certainly produced media.
Right? Yeah. And now at basically like 2007 onwards, when smartphones happened and publishing democratized, now that's what I mean by everything, right? People slice things up however they want now.
Because like I remember reading somewhere about how culture was people who refer to films as the cinema or films, and then there's everyone else who call them movies. I guess when you look at the way, the reason why we're talking about this today is because there is what we know now about how do we perceive society, how do we perceive each other, gender and representation, etc., etc. And then you see the stuff that's swirling around us. And there is a big disconnect. Do you think that's an elitist point of view, or?
I think it is. I think there is no disconnect. I'll tell you why. Because popular culture in this country has always it's been the zeitgeist of what's been actually happening in the country. In the sense, we're not sexist. We're not casteist or bigots. These are all things that are part of our popular culture.
That is absolutely correct. And at the end of the day, our popular culture, like you said, it is a reflection of that, and so it's there. And then, because again, there's two dimensions to it, right? There's a part of it which is, like you said, there's pop culture that reflects who we are, and then there's the pop culture that reflects who we want to be. And there's, I guess today we're talking about what Tushar mentioned right now.
Yeah, like it's what we are. The fact that these things exist in our country and we cater to the masses, right? Pop culture is popular culture. It's about catering to as many people as you can. It's not a niche product. It's
and also let's be real, right? We're currently three. Let's acknowledge just the degree of privilege in this.
We are
like in terms of just pop culture consumption, right?
Even in terms
we are three essentially people who live in the tier 1st city of all tier 1 cities in this country with access to broadband internet, where we had the means and the ability to have access to broadband internet way before so many people in this country did, at a breadth with so many people. So we are, of course, always first to certain conversations. It would be horrible if we were anything less than the first people to shed sexism or the first people to shed bigotry or because the conversation came to us first. So when you look at a certain kind of toxicity in our pop culture, it's not a disconnect so much as the conversation has just flowed past us. Right? And I don't want to say like down, because that says that it's that sort, which is not what it is. It's just we were at the vanguard and now it's flowing backwards towards everybody else. And I guess that's the sort of thing that takes a decade to get from Madhur Bhandarkar to Made in Heaven. That I'm just saying. Right? And I think that's where we are with a lot of issues and a lot of conversations right now.
Because one of the things I did want to talk about was, it's been 2020 is 25 years since two terribly influential films, right? 1995, there was DDLJ and there was Rangila. Okay. And like you watch DDLJ today and there's a lot of stuff over there that is, to use the words that all the kids are using, problematic. as far as their relationships are concerned, as far as the way they address each other, as far as all these things are concerned. And then there's a film like Rangila, which was also made at exactly the same time, was a hit film. It was not like some sleeper art film, some art film.
Yeah.
Was only in like these random theaters. It was an actual hit movie with a star, etc. Why do you think Bollywood went in, and then after DDLJ you had all these other films like the Karan Johar films and all? Why do you think it went in that direction and didn't go in another?
I don't know that it didn't simultaneously go in both directions.
Okay.
In the sense that I don't think we definitively chose one. I mean, did one sort of leap ahead in terms of mainstream this thing than the other? Yes. I mean, absolutely, right? The sort of Yash Raj, Karan Johar, this thing. Because they were also, I guess, what in entertainment you call 4-quadrant pictures, right? Which is where they were hitting everything they were casting the widest net. And don't forget, hugely important factor, NRIs. They chased that dollar, right? So that was financially decisive in terms of what they could do with money versus the sort of money that, say, if you were Ram Gopal Varma or you were Anurag Kashyap, or anybody else had access to. But it's not that those films didn't happen. I mean, don't forget that sort of Satya and DDLJ are also kind of happening, I don't think too many years apart from each other.
I think 3-4 years.
Like 3-4 years tops, right?
Also, to be fair, as much as everyone likes to hate on Ram Gopal Varma right now, the kind of films that he made in the 90s have directly led to people like Anurag Kashyap and Sri Ram Raghavan, and all of them worked on those films.
In a weird way, he's a great cautionary tale, right? To just tell you that just because today you're at the vanguard of a certain conversation doesn't mean you'll always be. You can be left behind the conversation if you don't listen. And I feel like maybe that's something that happened with...
Also, I feel the other reason that sort of Rangila did not... I mean, it's still got cult status, and it still holds up better than DDLJ, at least in my opinion. I think it was also the time. Like the 90s was when India was really opening up. You wanted to see Switzerland. You wanted to see happy, positive, rich things on your screen, as opposed to a Rangila, which is gritty in a way.
Yeah,
it's funny, gritty. It's Bombay. It's hardcore Bombay. As opposed to a DDLJ, which shows you like London. It shows you Switzerland. It shows you aspiration. It shows you stuff that you in the 90s was picking up because you finally had access to the world again.
Oh yeah, it was huge. Again, because I mean, remember before this, if your movie had like an international city in it, that fucking city was in the name of the movie, right? Like it was love in Tokyo, love in London. That's right. We went to London. So it was huge to suddenly just have these stories be like, and cast and not in a weird way about just the most, how do I phrase this? Just the most nuanceless, aspirational version of the Indian dream of the 90s, right? Yeah. Which at that point was do what you can, off to America or the UK and make too good best life over there. And then just live it up with the cars and the mansion and the this and the that and things that you would just not have access to here. Be in a place where for somehow, and this plays in so many ways in so many movies, right? Be in a place where you are either equal to or superior to these white people who had once subjugated us, etc., all shows up. And then on the other hand, you have like Bhiku Matre being shot in like this gritty little chawl in Bombay, and you go, I don't know which one I want to watch.
Also, to be all of Ram Gopal Varma's films were independent films. They were not studio films. So there was also that.
Yeah, it becomes very apparent when you watch it, like in retrospect now, because like for instance, I saw, believe it or not, I saw K3G for the first time 8 months ago. I don't know how I missed it. Okay.
K3G is a trip. Like that movie is an absolute trip.
Really it is, man. And then suddenly so much stuff started making sense.
All the memes made sense to you.
Like I discovered the Rosetta Stone to India. It's like...
Oh, yeah. Like, for example, with K3G, right? I go back and I watch that movie. And for me, the single biggest, like, dissatisfaction with the plot is whole movie. I have now watched this movie multiple times. I still cannot tell why Kajol was horrible to that white woman, to her British neighbor. Like, I kept looking for this sort of inciting incident where like either this white woman was racist or something, and I could not find anything that this woman did.
So, but this is the thing, right? So, a lot of our mainstream comedy is essentially shitting on people.
Fair.
If you think about it. At least like the Bollywood comedy that you see is shitting on people.
Yeah, fair. I mean, just gonna not talk about the roast and just move on very quickly. Like at all, like let's just move on. But yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right? Because that is sort of what, and everybody, we live in the world of like sick burn, bro. Right? Like that's what we live in. And that's what our pop culture reflects. But yeah, KCG is a trip. Like there are so many just simplistic ideas of hyper-nationalism just sprinkled in there. And just random like calls to our glorious traditions, and like I have no idea why they're all doing Karwa Chauth. They're
modern and shiny.
Yeah. I take that back. I was going to say I have no idea why they're doing Karwa Chauth there, but I have spent way too much time around NRIs to say that they're all doing it. They're
often more traditional than we are.
Often is, I would say like 99% of the time.
Yeah.
Like I have been around NRIs. It's just been me rejecting offers to come to random community events for this thing.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, I'm in the UK. The only community event I want to go to is called pub. And I will go to pub. And like there's satsangs. I'm like, we don't do that back home, like on a day-to-day basis. It's not like there's always a satsang at somebody's house. And it's just, that's how it is. It's like every 3 days, like, what do you remember? Satsang at this one's house. Satsang at this one's house. Satsang at this one's house. And man, I guess those films really hit the G-spot for them. Because it presents them with such an amazing ideal version of India where, like Tushar said, it looks beautiful. Right?
Yeah.
And modern as shit. But nobody's had to sacrifice a single, like, traditional Indian value to attain that modernity.
It's not just the NRIs, yeah. Like I've seen personally also how you have suddenly Malayali weddings where they have sangeets and
that's huge, right? Like sangeets are literally like a Yashraj invention. Just physically just pulled that one out of their ass and just made it a thing.
Because
just to be clear, we are meandering because these are just traditions. These are not toxic, not necessarily all of them.
Fair.
Well, that's the influence of films like these.
Yeah, that's the influence of these films. So, but we need to toxic areas because that is what we will be talking about today.
I think
so much toxicity. I feel like I grew up watching 80s and 90s. I can't think of a single Hindi film I saw where like the hero didn't slap the heroine once at least. Like, and it was always shown as an amazingly just act. Right? Like in the sense that it just basically subdued this hysterical woman. I'm using very large air quotes when I say that.
No, but see, so that's the thing. So let's go section like issue by issue as such. Like for example, when it comes to the sexism/misogyny angle of it,
right?
Where very rarely, at least over the last 30-35 years that we've sort of been consuming stuff, very rarely have you seen films or pop culture go beyond what society is doing. In the sense, very rarely have you seen it go super progressive, beyond what we're doing.
Right.
I can't think of any major examples. It's always what's happening or what's worse.
I feel like
it's always what's happening or what's worse.
Sure. Like not in mainstream culture at least, right? Like I'm sure different subcultures have their own, like say for example, we might not have known about it, but I'm sure there was queer cinema happening, all of that stuff happening, but not hitting the mainstream.
On a very small scale, to be fair.
And also nothing to sort of compete with or take on the onslaught of all the terrible portrayals of the LGBTQ community that were happening, say, at that time. So, we've never been encouraged to imagine a socially better world in our pop culture.
Yeah, that was what I wanted to bring up. That it's always a reflection or an assumed reflection of what things are and never an aspiration to how things can be better. Do you think that's a fair statement?
By and large, yes, I think.
By and large. I feel like you have the counter example. Like, I think, Tushar, you were talking about Shubh Mangal Saavdhan, right? Like, that's a big thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like to have, and this is not like this is one of currently like your top heroes, right?
Yeah.
This is one of your top actors in the country right now doing a role where, like Tushar mentioned, this is somebody kissing a man. That's a big step. That again, to us who are right here at the vanguard of the conversation today must seem like nothing. But to somebody who is today watching the news and thinks like if you have a little bit of bud, you are the head of a drug crime syndicate. That small normalization of like a man kissing another man must be, I don't know what.
I don't think there have been any positive. There must have been some positive portrayal of drug use, right, in films. I'm just going off over here, but guys is smoking a doob and not then murdering people or.
There have been lots of portrayals of that, but this has just slid the conversation back.
Go Goa Gone.
Go Goa Gone. Yeah, that was
some others also, I think. Yeah.
Like a stoner comedy, though.
Yeah.
Okay, so on that note, we need to take a quick sponsor break. Yes, guys, we have some sponsors now. We'll see you soon on the other side.
I want to thank Intel for supporting our show. We're all loving working from home, but let's be honest, there are complications to this. For example, getting help from IT folks if your PC is down can be a challenge because you can't just walk up to the IT support desk anymore to get your issue sorted out. Well, you'll be happy to hear that I have a solution for all your work from home pains. The Intel vPro platform. The platform comes packed with Intel Active Management technology that lets your IT teams remotely manage your system, fix the problems even when the PCs aren't near them or are unresponsive, especially with the reduced desk site visits. So it means more time getting your work done and less time spent on getting support. What's more, the vPro platform also maximizes all your PC security, stability, and performance needs. Visit intel.in/morewithvpro, that's VPRO, to discover how you can do more of what you want and less of what you don't. If you're listening on the IVM Podcast Android app, you will be able to click the link that's visible to you now.
And welcome back to the episode. We were talking about toxicity in Indian pop culture. And Joel, you were telling us something.
Yeah, so basically what I was saying was, besides the misogyny and it also influences the way we perceive, like, for instance, civics or our government, right? Like, for those of us who have access to American television or have watched an American movie, which is a lot of us, to be fair, you watch a show like Criminal Minds or Castle or, any of the CSI Miami and people get arrested and they're like, I think we all know what Miranda rights are. But the way in our culture, governments the police is depicted or due process is shown. Even that, do you think like filmmakers or people who are portraying the popular culture are responsible for these ideas? Like, the fact that cops will just bust into a house and beat everyone.
I mean, yes and no. In the sense that, yes, obviously, if you're going to make a certain portrayal, if that portrayal is popular, it is going to influence how people see the real institution that portrayal is of, even if you insist what you're making is a piece of fiction. But in a small way, the actual system or institution itself is also a little bit responsible for it, in the sense that if you try to make a legal show about the actual speed at which court cases in India go, it would be 69 seasons of one case. Like, that's not cinematic. Real police work is not again, this is not the cops' fault, but real police work is not cinematic, right? So they have to have something to fill. And also, real police work does not always lead to catharsis. This is important. But every film needs catharsis. This is the flaw built into the medium, right? And easiest way of catharsis is always laugh.
And to be fair, a lot of times our due process is chori hui to watchman ko bula ke 4 chaate maro aur pucho tune chori kiya kya?
Also think how it translates to your own experience of due process, right? Yeah. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like whenever something happens, I think most people's first instinct is, how can I minimize the time I spend dealing with the cops or this thing, or let's just call it the tras, which is what we call it on this, right? So if essentially that tras is then taken and turned into catharsis in a movie, we are as responsible. Like, Joel, come on, this is Mia Culpa time. You and I, Singham is our favorite movie. We are friends outside of this. And we agree that every single time Singham is on TV, we watch it and unironically love the shit out of it, right?
Yeah. Even though I recognize, oh my God, this is terrible.
Of course.
and we really shouldn't be watching this. Like, I don't know if I was telling you the other day, right? I rewatched Bad Boys.
Bad Boys 3 is like it is a terroristic abomination.
I'm talking about the first one. First one. Okay. Because I was building up to 3. So I watched the first one and which came out again in 1995. Okay, 94. Sorry. Then I watched the second one and I watched the third one, and I'm like, wow, these cops are they? I don't know, like, you know.
Bad Boys 3 is, I feel like, if there is such a thing as possibly the most worstest, wrongest movie for a time or for a zeitgeist,
it's this.
Bad Boys 3.
Yeah.
Bad Boys 3. Like, it is the image of two African American cops on a motorbike looking at each other and saying the rules, and I quote, "Violence is what we do."
Yes.
Wow, they actually say that.
That's an actual line in the movie. Will Smith, Martin Lawrence, two African American men who are police in the year 2020 saying violence is what we do. So, in case anybody thought this podcast was some sort of assault on Indian pop culture, I assure you, pop culture everywhere, very shit. Yes. But yeah, I mean, in the sense, so my friend Anushka, and I'm not, this is not to me, and this is to bring things back straight into focus. My friend Anushka Shah is one of the founders and person who works with this thing called Civic Studios. Right? And what Civic Studios does, it's an MIT incubated thing where they try to look at entertainment and they try to look at it from a civic perspective, which is how does entertainment or pop culture's portrayal of something then translate into public perception of that thing. And they did this really interesting survey based on, I think, pop culture that they took from 2016 to 2019 or something like that. And they analyzed, I think the study you can find on their website, which is called Civic Studios. It's called Crime and Punishment in Indian Pop Culture. And so it draws some pretty interesting things. So again, I don't know, correlation, causation, all of that. I'd encourage everybody to read the study. But one of their findings says that when they surveyed a bunch of people who'd say, seen a movie like Simba, for example, which is essentially, spoiler alert, about a cop who goes off book and gets justice outside of the due process his job would otherwise require him to do. And people who had not watched Simba. And they asked them they asked these people about their support of police violence to resolve situations. And they found that people who'd sort of seen these movies and been exposed to them were more likely to agree with the use of police violence and fewer respondents among those who hadn't seen these sort of pop culture units agreed with the idea of police violence and said no, due process is more important. And that's huge. Similarly, respondents who'd seen, like, say, movies like Jolly LLB 2 or shows like Criminal Justice were more likely to have favorable opinions of the idea of, yes, we have something called a working judiciary, or that, yes, the law works, versus, say, people who didn't consume content that sees the judiciary in action. So there's tangible consequences to this, and you can then eventually draw a line. And I want to be very careful about here not harping on Simba specifically, because there is a chain of movies across Indian pop culture history, right? I think you could have a statue in the public square of like a cop with a belt midair and some criminal lying down, and it could be one of 500 movies.
Yeah, so there's never, I mean, every time a hero is a cop, he's someone who's breaking the system.
100%.
Breaking the rules.
100%, right? He has to
breaking
break
the rules
or go
and,
past
like,
it.
you know,
and
fighting the bureaucracy.
And there is a line eventually that you can draw from all these hundreds of movies to what happened with somebody like, say, Jairaj and Ben X in Tamil Nadu, right? Which is...
So I think it's
a long line, thing. But it is a straight one that eventually leads there.
No, I think it's a combination of things. It's sort of like a vicious cycle, because what you see of the cop is also a reflection of the reality that exists, right? So there are good cops. I mean, like, remember how we made heroes out of Encounter cops?
100%.
I mean, we still make heroes out of Encounter cops. Yeah. So it's like a circular thing where the film is reflecting what the reality is, but the reality is also then taking it from the film. So it's like a cycle that keeps feeding itself.
Yeah. It is absolutely like that. And at some point, though, you've got to engage with the opposite idea, which is that maybe the guys who do that aren't necessarily the best or the heroes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, something as simple as, like, you know, the Dark Knight conversation where Harvey Dent Batman is trying to make sure that Harvey Dent it's about procedure. He's not someone who's killed him or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you ever imagine that conversation happening in India?
Harvey Dent would be the hero.
Yeah.
In Indian film, Harvey Dent would be the hero.
Yeah. I've been watching this show on Netflix called The Fall. Okay.
The Irish.
It's a good show.
So there's this. I'm not going to so they have. It's a show about a serial killer, and at one point they have a suspect. Okay, and then they're in Northern Ireland, so British rules of policing, etc. And they have the suspect, and they're pretty sure it's him, and they are absolutely sure it's him. But I'm watching this film, and I'm like, this show, and I'm like, why aren't they arresting him? Pick him up. They know it's him. Pick him up. And they're like, no, we don't have a warrant, and we don't have due. And I was like, wow, this is what procedure really is. We're so.
Yeah.
This is our idea, of film, of this.
And the funny thing is, this you will see this in Indian films, but only when it's the bad guy. Like, I don't have enough evidence against the Gunda, so if I catch him, I will have to let him go. So we show this, but also this we show in a bad light.
Yeah, that's true. That is what causes the hero to go off the book.
Yeah. So we do show procedure, but we show it in the wrong light.
Is there any of these Hindi films where they'll be like, I want your badge and your gun on my desk?
So the interesting story is, not the badge and the gun thing, but procedure. There's a famous story about Sholay, where technically, spoiler alert, but I don't know if after 45 years you've not seen them.
I think the spoiler moratorium on Sholay.
45 years. So in the film that was released, Gabbar Singh is arrested. But the initial film that was shot, as in that was sent to the censors, had him being killed. But the censors were like, why don't you show him being arrested? We don't show him getting killed and all. Just show like procedural aspects. In a sense, make it look like justice was served by going to jail. So we did have these moments in the past where we did show that, follow Qanun and stuff.
It's interesting again to come back to that sort of I was reading that Civic Studios report, and one of the words that comes up is sort of this, to sum it up, is your film's attitude engaging with the idea of process, or is it sort of insurrectionist? Is a word that they use, which is an interesting word, right? Because that is, in a sense, what it is, right? It's an insurrectionist thought, right? Which is where the idea is, even though I'm supposed to be a representative of the system, everything that it represents, and I will just go do this on my own individual whim.
Yeah.
Right? And it is somehow, at least cinematically, when you're watching it, inspiring.
But why do you think that our entertainment industry is so reluctant to push the envelope as far as these things are concerned? Why does it seem that a lot of our popular culture, whether it's films, whether it's movies, whether it's music, a lot of our television, I'm not talking about the sharp end on streaming services and all, but I'm talking about our regular, there's so much status quoism, so like ideas that are regressive, discredited. Why do you think we don't push? Do you think there's a fear of a backlash?
Not only that, I mean, first of all, like the industry is not a behemoth, right? There are people who are pushing ideas, etc., all of that. But I think overall, I just feel like because that's just bluntly not a thing they're prioritizing when they're making economic and creative decisions. I think it's as simple as that. These are decisions that are made, I think, largely just almost like cynically, financially, in the sense that just give people what they want, right? Or give people what they like, or give people that sort of mollycoddles their way of life. Look at the stereotypes that the daily soap has given us, right? We've spent so much time talking about films. Let's come to these, the daily soaps, right? The things that in so many different ways ruined the entertainment landscape, like for a good 15 years, I think. I feel like we're still climbing out of like the fallout of that era in so many ways. But first of all, took the idea of the sort of mother-in-law and daughter-in-law's relationship back by decades, right? The idea is that you are this person coming into this evil in-law home and that is it. And every single relationship must eventually be this inherently political, dramatic, hierarchical act where everything is like, says something about your morality.
And of course, if in this whole context,
And then if it is daily, from Monday to Thursday, with some of the lowest production values or creative or imagination values that you've ever seen. And it's like the iceberg that sinks the Titanic, because on the one hand, you're pushing forward all these aggressive ideas. Two, they're making money. So now 400 more people are making exactly those shows. Because you're running Monday to Thursday, all you're doing is satisfying the Monday to Thursday demand, which means you will never punch higher creatively. That's just not something that your Monday to Thursday schedule allows. You will then ruin the entire chain in the process. Do you remember there was a point where even if you were watching something on Star World, they would do something like about this was huge about 4 or 5 years ago, where it'd be like Breaking Bad. But seasons 1 to 5 are going to run Monday to Thursday over the course of this next month. Because what they did is they went in and realized that this had habituated people to this Monday to Thursday viewing so much that people couldn't fathom the idea of a weekly show anymore, or watching something 1 week at a time. So even if you're showing people Breaking Bad, you have to be like, here, just binge it in one shot. Otherwise, people are not going to come back next week. Mm-hmm. And how do you create an imaginative product when those are the things you're working towards? So that toxicity is now cutting across so many levels. It's happening at the production end and at the consumption end.
That's true.
End rent.
Also, I just wanted to add, if on any of these shows you were wearing jeans, you were an evil woman.
Of course. Dude, 90% of the movies I saw in my youth, Hindi movies, were basically, it's like modern matlab, by the end, she'll turn out to be the guy who will leave the hero or is actually like evil vamp or whatever, finished.
No, the funny thing with a lot of our pop culture is, looks-wise, we look very modern. We look at the latest fashion, we will have a lot of stuff, but then when it comes to the important stuff, we will intentionally just jump back into a lot of really regressive stuff.
We come again to K3G, where Kareena Kapoor dresses in just actually some pretty slamming fashion for the first 2/3 of the movie. But then once her love to Hrithik Roshan is shown to be pure and sealed, she gets this full, like whatever, like the Bahu version of the Queer Eye makeover is.
Yeah.
And she just sort of does that. And I don't know what the happens after that.
Yeah. But the interesting thing in all of this is just like when you look around the world, when you look at the sort of the film industries across the world or the content industries across the world, at least in liberal democracies, although I will use that word very sparingly in our context now, but at least in democracies.
How many liberal democracies are there in 2020?
In democracies,
how many do you know?
Generally, the show business or the film industry or stuff generally tends to be on the liberal side. Generally tends to be. Ours is not that in a lot of ways, barring maybe a few ideas. I think we're better compared to other industries in terms of the mix of people working within the industry, as in compared to other Indian industries.
Okay, fair.
But when it comes to pure liberalism...
But even with that, people working in the industry is one thing, but how many of those people are working in visible positions?
Yeah, very few.
This is one completely stoner thought. And again, to just come back to that sort of Civic Studios, MIT Media Labs thing. I went to their building once and I saw a really interesting project that somebody was doing called the Average Face Project. Which is what they did was they took an organization, they would photograph every single person in that organization and then combine it into an average face. That tells you essentially how diverse or non-diverse your company is, right? Because if that average face ends up being a white dude, you've got a problem. If that average face ends up being just, say, a solely an African-American woman, that is also a problem, right? Because you've got to be across the board. I've always thought it would be really interesting to do something like that and chart like our film industry from the point color cinema came in to today.
Yeah.
And while I can't scientifically support this right now, I'm willing to bet money that we've gotten whiter.
Yeah.
As our average sort of visible face goes, if you had to take, say, our top 50 movies of every single year and take the top 2 stars in those movies in terms of as a reflection of who we are as a people, like, yeah, maybe there's a mix of them working behind the scenes or whatever, but that diversity has... Like, I'll tell you like a heartbreaking story, right? That someone once told me. There was one guy who used to be a side villain just because he was basically dark-skinned. And to the point where the lingo back then was as simple as, I have to play henchman क्योंकि मेरे चेहरे की वजह से मुझे decent में नहीं लेंगे. Listen to the wording.
Yeah.
मुझे decent में तो नहीं लेंगे. Because the implication there is so direct.
Yeah.
That I'm really curious to see what that sort of face map would look like right now in terms of that inclusivity or whatever. I think so many horrible perceptions.
True. True. But that's the thing, in terms of portrayal, how often do you see a Dalit Bahujan Adivasi character playing
a
not
at all unless the actual text of the story is about this person being a Bahujan person and some sort of either atrocity or this thing where then that has to be lampshaded hugely. And then that is the only reason that person is there.
Yeah, which
they cannot be there just as part of a normal functioning society. They are only there because we are spotlighting that.
Yeah, like even in Article 15, where the main character was an upper caste guy who was the savior.
Yeah.
There was one Bahujan character who was first relegated to the role of activist, and then when he served his purpose was killed off.
Yeah.
Like, voila.
Yeah, like the black guy, I guess, in American horror films.
Yeah.
No, I
think in our case, it's even worse than the portrayal of black people in America, because at least there is still some mainstreaming of sort of black characters.
An understanding of that sort of inherent segregation. We have nothing. Like nothing. Like it doesn't even show up in the background of a scene as subtext. Like in the sense, America, at least race, it shows up in so many places just as subtext because they at least acknowledge it that way.
There is a lot of conversations about how the Dalit Bahujan experience in India is kind of like the black experience in America, right? Where, but in the US, in the last, say, 50 years or 40 years, you've had actual superstars, right? In films and in music and sports and, in advertisements and so on and so forth, which we haven't seen over here at all.
I have 2 words written here in my notes, Black Panther, and I mean, come on. Yeah. Right, that's where we've gone, right? At least in American pop culture, where that to that degree, but not here. No chance. Like no chance. Like,
and even the portrayal of everyone is stereotypical in general. Like for example,
100%.
If you have the Sikh character will always be Balle Balle. The Muslim character, there will always be an Eid reference or some sort of Allah reference. If there's
they all have to be there for that montage in the end where they're all praying for the inherently upper caste individual to succeed at his task, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's important, right?
You saw that guy Hussain, that stand-up comic who's doing a series of videos about Muslim representation in Bollywood, about how
that's very funny.
Very, very funny.
That's very funny. This is my friend Rahul. Hi. This is my friend Karan. Hi. This is my friend Anshul. Hi. This is my friend Mohammed. Adab.
I watched Gully Boys last year, which I really enjoyed. And even though I think that was the first film I saw in a very long time where the primarily Muslim characters were just shown as regular folks.
Someone had this joke where it's like, every time in a Hindi film they show a Muslim character, it suddenly goes into Mawla.
Yeah. Immediately.
And this was, I don't know who it was there. I don't know whose joke it was. But so it was along those lines. And the point was like, at least in Gully Boy, he was just a dude. He wasn't like his identity wasn't fully defined by his religion.
Yeah.
But although I wish they hadn't blackfaced him.
That brown face was intense.
Yeah, brown face was too much.
That brown face.
It's like you almost
this
got
is the frustrating thing about it.
Almost got there.
Thing about it. There could have been, if you'd actually sort of given them space in the larger entertainment thing, a variety of people who could have stepped in as a superstar and played that role without needing to be brown-faced for any reason, because this is a country with a variety of skin tones. So how is it that everybody who's a superstar seems to be of more or less within a certain spectrum of wheatish only?
Yeah.
That's a problem. Like,
that is a huge problem
in Bollywood. Like, it's a huge problem.
But there has been, I would, like, for instance,
to the point where, like, other industries have not had these exclusions, but those actors have never been able to cross over into Bollywood, because how can we have like this skin tone?
Dude, it's like when Dhanush was in Ranjana.
Yeah.
And as problematic as a movie as that was, it was massively
different problematic.
But my God, the reactions to Dhanush, like, ye kaise aa gaya? This dark looking dude, why is a hero? How can he become a hero? And like, what do you say to that?
I guess it's because who controls all the money? Considering they're mostly like, I guess, upper caste men with like certain values, quote unquote values.
Yeah.
I just think, I guess they just want to see more of themselves on screen. Do you think that, even though it takes time for progressive ideas to penetrate popular culture, do you think we are seeing some effects of it in recent times?
I'm always damn wary of answering this question.
I'll draw your attention to one thing, that I have noticed personally. The death of the item song. Right. There was
death of the item song?
Yeah, what world are you living in, buddy?
What death of it? Did you cross over into some other timeline? Are you living in a separate timeline?
Literally, there's an item song coming out every month.
Just check 1 second. Okay, go open Wikipedia in your timeline and check if Nelson Mandela dead or alive. I just need you to check.
The item song
because the item song is not even slightly dead.
No, in the way that they used to portray them.
No. It's not that, Joel. It's just that the hype around item songs has died down now because they've been normalized. Yeah. So you don't see them in the news cycle anymore because it's not a thing. That doesn't mean the thing is gone. It's the same as YouTube videos. There was a time where every video was like, you'd have an article about it because it went viral because it was such a new thing. Now there's still videos going viral. There's just no video coverage of it because everything goes viral.
It's like, you remember how back in the day when there was a kissing scene in the film, they're like, there is a kissing scene in this film.
Lip lock, buddy. It's not a kissing scene, it's a lip lock.
And they do a counter. This film has
made by the same
kisses.
People who make Ziploc.
Yeah, this film has 8 kisses, 9 kisses, 6 kisses. And now nobody gives a
which in a way is a good thing, right? So that's an example of when you talk about, say, positivity and like things is coming out where you normalize affection and displays of it. So, I guess in the one hand, I guess some change, etc. All of that. Your example is, by the way, totally invalid, Joel. And I reject your question completely as a result of that.
I guess that I thought item numbers are dead because I just haven't heard of them anymore.
So the guy who doesn't actively in any way seek out Hindi popular entertainment hasn't seen an item number, assumes they don't exist anymore.
No, also,
Joel, that's like me assuming that Republicans don't exist anymore just because I don't read Politico as much as you do, right?
Also, it's a result of our own media consumption, right? Right now, we're only looking at for demand media consumption in the sense we're watching a Netflix, we're watching a Hotstar.
Everything we watch is catered to us.
We're not surfing channels anymore.
Yeah, is what we want to watch. You don't see it because you don't want to see it, but it's alive and well. I'm also really wary about answering these questions about has there been enough progress or are we seeing slow turns?
There's definitely not been enough.
I am a Max Savarna male. I don't get to judge that, in the sense that ask the stakeholders who are not represented that question, I guess. Because I feel very overrepresented in this industry right now. So it's cool. And I'm not even saying that just to be woke bullshit or whatever. It's a fact. We know this.
No, and I think it'll be safe to say that there's very little progress. There is some progress in the digital space, but otherwise very little.
But nothing that nowhere near what it should be.
Yeah.
Is there any content that has managed to flip change something?
I think the biggest is the example that we gave of Shubh Mangal Savdhan, where an Ayushmann Khurrana is sitting is in Uttar Pradesh and making out with another dude in front of his conservative family. And that film made some 80-90 crores. So I was surprised because I didn't think I'd see this on Indian content for a while. Especially because Bollywood is as mainstream as it gets, right? Digital is still not everyone's watching it.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing there are some small things that are for example, I am also occasionally surprised pleasantly by things I don't expect to. And I can't even believe that this is a positive anecdote, but I was watching Salman Khan's Dabangg 2, right? Of course, many other notions of, again, police horse shit and brutality and all of that emerge as a result of watching movies like that. But there's a scene in there where, if I'm not mistaken, I'm sorry, but there's a scene where Sonakshi Sinha says something about I'm thinking about going to work or something like that. And I thought I'd ask you or whatever. And he stops in the middle and he goes, you don't need to ask me. Now, to you and me, that might seem patronizing as
yeah, but that's a big deal.
But I know for a fact that there's an entire bunch of people watching that movie for whom that's the most heroic thought in the movie. Right? And so, I don't know. I mean, piece by inches, but I can't be the judge of that progress one way or another in any way.
So to conclude, Indian pop culture is toxic. And hopefully someday it will not be. And Joel,
I feel like there are glimpses of positivity, but I have no idea if they're in the correct place.
I have a lot of hope from the digital space because I am seeing a lot of progress there. But
like we were saying at the start of this conversation only, I think it took some time for us to realize that it was toxic to begin with only, right?
Because it's also because the first time we can see all the data laid out in front of us right? When have we ever been able to before this? Like streaming and the internet is the only place that has allowed us to put all our pop culture on a wall together and take a long view of it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you could consume 1 or 2 things at a time on the 4 channels you got across 5 days, and you saw it once and it was gone and you never contemplated it again. But now we finally have the ability to do that. And I think, of course, that's happening. At what pace, I don't know.
Cool. So I think that pretty much covers most of what we wanted to sort of talk about. Because also this conversation is kind of never ending, because I think we can keep going into various examples.
Oh man, this could be like 400 episodes if we kept going. Could meander
forever.
A whole
podcasting series on its own. So
there's 2 pages of notes that I haven't even gotten to, guys. Like,
but yeah, so that pretty much brings us to the end of this week's podcast. Before we go, thank you, Rohan, for joining us. We will see you soon on our WhatsApp group.
I'll see you in 5.
If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out our other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We are IVM Podcast on Twitter and Instagram. Joshi, your handles are?
My handle on Instagram is at Mojorojo. And you can also check out my YouTube channel, which is Rohan Joshi.
Okay. Joel?
I am Pereira Joel on Twitter and joelpereira.esq on Instagram.
And you seriously got Pereira Joel on Twitter?
Yeah, because if you recall, I made my account in 2010, I think half an hour after you.
Yeah.
But Joel Pereira is such a common name globally.
He beat all the Brazilians and the Portuguese.
I know.
That's wild.
Also, wait, this is a later discussion.
I didn't even
get this is a later discussion. Wait, later discussion, let me finish. And I am Yonoki, please, on Twitter, and Tushar_Abhi on Tushar on Instagram. Tushar_Abhi on Instagram. And that's it from us. Thank you so much, guys. Bye.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed that show. I'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Intel. It's been a great week on the network this week. If you haven't been paying attention, please do listen to some of the shows. We had Chetan Bhagat. This was the first returning guest on Cyrus Says. Do check that out. Great episode. We had Palak Zatakia on Advertising is Dead. Really interesting conversation was had with Varun. We had another crossover on the habit codes. Zarina Poonawalla showed up over there to have a discussion with Ashton about anxiety and pressure. Begin the Journey with Ashish Vidyarthi continues to kill it. Please definitely do check it out. An old friend, Vijay Koshi, was on Storytellers and Storysellers. Do check that out as well. And I'd like to mention one thing. If you're a Tamil speaker, you should definitely check out our podcast, Kadai Podcast Punyan Selvan. Kavita Jiva has done a fantastic job to finish up her first story. It is the last episode which just came out last Monday. Do check it out if you speak Tamil. It is an incredible achievement. Please do check that out. And with that, hope to see you again next week.
Did I just catch you on your way to work? Or did you end up pulling an all-nighter? Let me guess. You have a packed schedule for the day, the week, and probably the month and the year. That's a lot for your mind to handle, don't you think? This buzzing chaos also brings tons of negative thoughts. Am I right? Try spinning that bottle in a positive direction with me, Chetna, on the Positively Unlimited podcast, every Monday on IBM Podcasts. It's time to change your life one alphabet at a time.